Yeah, I'd say that pretty much explains what happened last week. So in case you guys didn't see the show, here's what happened as we were getting ready to finish the show last week. And since I'm doing a complete rewrite from page 1 down to wherever this thing's going to end up, and I'm also kind of shifting tune with it a little bit too. I'm writing it as if it's a novel, and I'm setting the stage for everything, and giving details about locations, people, what they look like, what they sound, things like that. And then he's gonna go and send it to a script doctor, and the script doctor is gonna turn it into a screenplay, and then him and I together as directors, and I'm also going to be coming on as an executive producer, are going to work on getting a cast filmed and things like that, and potentially turn this into a movie that I originally wanted it to be. But I'm going to tell you guys about the project and everything like that here. But that's kind of what's been going on, and we'll get dive deeper into a lot of this other stuff here in just as we're getting into this as well. Yep, we were hacked. We don't know who did it. We don't know why. We're thinking that it was because we had a live stream going and, somebody just wanted to interrupt the shenanigans and the fun. But we are back. We got everything up and running again. So here we go. Here is the conclusion of last week's episode of Money's Crazy Mind.
This is for the kids that snort pixie sticks. I'm sick of it, doing right, doing wrong. Parents pissed off every time I write a song. Smoke, crack, worship Satan, what the fuck is that? It's something funny, made for you to laugh at.
You're destroying America with your rap.
You're so full of shit I need to call hazmat. The only way I would ever apologize
I gotta go on
if I
record
had
with
my
this,
face
right?
buried
I
in your
really
sister's
do.
thighs.
Never in 39 years have I ever seen anything like
Okay, I'm sorry
It
for what
shows
it's worth,
the
but the best
fanaticism
part of you was the
of this fan
afterbirth.
base, and
If you
it's
can't
crazy.
take a fucking joke, then go jump in the river. Na 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 na
Into the
na
return
na
of
na,
Snap.
and I fucked your sister.
where
You
you
can't
overshadow
take a fucking joke, then go jump in the river. La 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 la
That it was
la
kind
la
of,
la,
for me,
and I fucked your sister.
If you want to continue to put this narrative out there, that Cody finishing the story
What the
fuck, dude?
Hey,
is
yo,
this
he's talking
big,
shit.
daunting
What the fuck
task.
is this? Hey,
And
this
Cody
talking
has
shit.
all these
Run
mountains
your
to
mouth.
climb and all
This
these
what you
brass
gonna
rings
get.
to pull
Screwdriver
down.
jam in your
And of course, we
fucking
gotta
eye.
thank our
So
official
long.
music
Thanks
sponsor,
for coming
Psych
by.
Ward,
Tell your
for the
sister
continued
I'll be
use
over by
of
10 with my dick in
funny
the mouth and my balls on her chin. She's bobbing her head to this fucking beat. Damn, dog, man, your sister's a freak. Hey, baby, you like the Eagles? Wanna hear something?
Okay, am I finally on? All this new security shit we got going on here. Hopefully, welcome back to the show. Sorry about what happened last week. I didn't know about it. You know, I'm in a completely different area than where Command Central is for Nameless Faceless Productions, and all of a sudden over my headphones I hear and that was it. And then I'm picking up phones and I'm like, what the fuck? And they're like, yeah, we got hacked. You know, so now we got all this new stuff in here. We got the fancy Dan hand scanner. We got all that stuff. So, but welcome back. I hope everybody's out there watching with us this week. So yeah, everybody, welcome back to the show. So here's what I think happened last week, okay? I don't necessarily think that it was like an actual like hack job, like Anonymous was coming through and saying, fuck the Nameless Faceless guys, let's fuck their shit up. I honestly think it was just somebody being stupid. And for some reason, thought it would be funny and fun to hijack our stream. That is honestly what I think happened. That's honestly what I think the situation was. I hold no ill will towards anybody or anything that happened last week. It happened. There's nothing we can do about it. You know, you just kind of gotta go with the flow and just keep swimming, as Dory would say, right? So, you know, no ill will towards anything that happened last week. No, I'm, you know, was I angry about it at the time? Yes. And I was angry about it because I was just starting to get into the meat and potatoes of the one thing that everybody's kind of been wanting us to talk about for a long time. And that's, you know, this project that's kind of put the show on the back burner for a long time. And, you know, I mean, we had such a great episode, you know, from the start with the footage from Bad Juju and Four Loko, where I'm literally walking up to them guys and just going, smile pretty for the camera. Yeah, you know, I bet you the girls like you, huh? Yeah, the girls? Yeah. To the guys? Yeah, bet you the guys like you too. Yeah, come on. All right, destroy me now, yeah, destroy me now, yeah, give it, yeah, as Dr. Venkman would say when he's photographing Vigo the Carpathian. But anyway, you know, I mean, I know I said it throughout the broadcast last week. I want to thank both of those bands for giving us the unprecedented access that we had to that show. We were allowed on the stage. We were allowed behind the stage, even though there's not really anything behind the stage except for the bathrooms. You know, but we were, you know, I was right up against the stage and everything like that. And, you know, I even showed the raw, uncut footage to Tony from Bad Juju, from Four Loko. And he's just like, dude, this is amazing. Like, thank you so much for doing this. And, you know, so it was awesome to do that. You know, Chad and the gang from Bad Juju also reached out and said thank you. The footage looked great. The reason why there was no sound is because now I know that YouTube has a problem with copyright stuff, even if it's a cover band and stuff like that. I don't know about Rumble yet, and I know that Rumble kind of has like this big thing of like, we're the non-copyright infringement people. We're, you know, we don't give a fuck. We have no filter. We're not gonna censor you. We have no censorship and things like that. And I'm just like, okay, cool, that's great. You know, that means I can say fuck. And that means I can be a little bit politically incorrect, and I'm not going to get in trouble for that. But I don't want to sit there and push boundaries, if you get what I'm saying, with copyright stuff, right? And I have a feeling that maybe some of what happened last week might have had something to do with that footage from that concert. So that's the only reason why I'm saying what I'm saying when it comes to what happened at the end of the show last week. But again, you know, not going to let it put me down, not going to let it sway anything that we're doing. And then the other question I got a lot last week, and I kind of want to address it, is, okay, so Nameless Faceless Productions stream went down. What about KZ Productions, since we work with KZ Productions? Everything that I do out of Nameless Faceless. So if if anything were to happen with KZ's stream, it wouldn't affect Nameless Faceless Productions. If anything happens with Nameless Faceless Productions stream, it doesn't affect KZ Productions. And the reason for that is for in case something like what happened last week happens. So basically, when we go and we start doing the show here at Nameless Faceless Productions, we basically just say, here's the footage, put it out, on this date, on this time, to KZ, and they do it. That way, our stream doesn't get interrupted. That way, their stream doesn't get interrupted. And in case something like what happens last week happens, the only people that get affected by it are Nameless Faceless. So that's with that. So I mean, obviously, like the show ended at the exact same time for them as it did for us, but that's just because that's the way the show ended. You'll have to excuse me. I'm sure everybody knows, like, this past week has just been misery incarnate for pretty much most of North America, with unprecedented heat and unprecedented humidity. And my allergies are just like for me right now. I mean, I have the world's largest jar or bottle of allergy pills, right? I mean, this thing is fucking massive. There are 1,000 tablets in this bottle, and I've probably only used a third of it so far. But I mean, I'm doubling up on that shit, right? Like, I don't take two at a time because then I just be. But I, like every 6 hours. Oh, now I can breathe. So if you guys hear my voice kind of doing what it's doing right now, or if it sounds like I'm congested or anything like that, it's because of the humidity that we've been having. My allergies are just murder. My eyes are on fire, so you might even see me like take my glasses off and dab my eyes with a paper towel or something. It's just because like I can't fucking see. Like, so but yeah, so no ill will towards what happened last week. And if the person that did whatever they did last week is watching the show, fuck you, for one. But for two, that's all I got to say, bro. Like, hey, you did what you did. I can't stop you from doing it again. If you want to do it again, go right the fuck ahead. I'm not going to stop you from doing it. But just know this time you're not going to be able to slow the show down because we got you beat, motherfucker. And I'm not going to tell you how I got you beat, but we got you beat. Cool? Cool. All right. The only thing that really pissed me off about that happening is the fact that I was like this close to getting into like the actual crux of what the project is, right? And this project could be a huge deal for Nameless Faceless Productions. And if it turns out to be a huge deal for Nameless Faceless Productions, it's going to turn out to be a huge deal for KZ Productions. And that's kind of like why I was so upset about it, right? Because I want to get KZ involved in any way I possibly can. That's part of the deal that I have with KZ. That's why their logos are appearing in every episode of the show. And as I say that, their logos pop up. How cool is that, right? But like I was like just getting ready to sit there and say, here's the details of the project. Here's what we're working on. Here's why this is a big deal. Here's the, this, that, the third, and so on, so forth, whatever. And then all of a sudden that happened, and it kind of completely derailed everything that I had. Like, it completely derailed the thought process into everything that I was going, getting ready to get into and all that. And I was kind of just, fuck! Like, this just had to happen now, like when I was this close, man, but then, the other side of me kicked in, and that's when it's just like, I'm getting on the phone with the folks at the Nameless Faceless head office, and I'm like, what happened? Why am I off the air? Why am all of my hearing is TV static? Just like, but kudos to everybody at headquarters for being able to, get the, we're experiencing technical difficulties screen up as quickly as they did, which, I mean, honestly, the way that we have everything set up over there, it's literally just, and it goes. So, I mean, it's not like it's rocket science or anything like that. And I'm not sitting there saying like, other places wouldn't have been able to get it up that quick or not, but that's just the way we were able to do it, how quickly they were able to do it. And I give them propsicles for that. But yeah. So the project. When I started this project years ago, I was working on another project, and that project was going to be a Ghostbusters fan film. A kind of faux, I don't want to say faux, a fictional depiction on how the Northeast Ohio Ghostbusters came to be. So not necessarily the charity group, the Northeast Ohio Ghostbusters, but this was going to be like a fictional franchise of the Ghostbusters that takes place in Northeast Ohio. And, we were going to use the NEO logo, and we were going to use all of that stuff. And even like members of the group were going to make cameo appearances because, I think that that's important. If we're writing a fictional story about how this group came to be, at least put the members of the group in it, especially the founding members of the group, right? And I'm writing. And I already had this idea in my head of how I wanted to introduce the main character. And, I'm writing. And this dude's tortured, right? And that's the way I wanted him to be. I'm not making him a tortured character because I don't want him to be tortured. I wanted him to be tortured. And there's a damn good reason why he's tortured. And as I'm writing, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, and I'm just like, why not just make like a quick little 45-minute movie showing what happened to this guy and why he is the way he is. And that's kind of where the idea got started for this project. And so I'm just like, you know what? I got to do it. I got to write this. I want to be able to tell this story right. And at least this way, by telling this story first, I can sit there and say, you got to come back and see what happens next. And then that would lead into the Ghostbusters movie. So all of a sudden, I'm just like, okay, I know what happens. Like, I already have an idea in my head of how this movie is going to end. And I'm not talking the Ghostbusters movie at this point. I'm talking about the other project that was stemming out of it. I'm like, so this is the ending. Like, this is the end point that I need to get to. Something happens where this guy throws away everything that he's ever believed in as a scientist, picks up a proton pack, and walks into the woods. Credits. Like, we never see how that story ends, right? And that was always going to be the payoff. Was, wait, what? This dude just walked into the woods with a fucking proton pack, and you're giving us credits? Are we coming back at some point? And then at the end of the credits, very Marvel Cinematic Universe, this character will return in Ghostbusters Rebirth, or whatever the name of the movie was going to be called. I don't even remember. I don't even remember what I called the movie. Redemption. Ghostbusters Redemption. That's it. That's what the movie is going to be. And so I'm just like, okay, so that's the ending. I have the ending. Now I need to come up with 44 other minutes. um, and so I started thinking, and I'm just like, so what kind of story do I want to tell? Obviously, we know that we're going to have to make this a fan film of some caliber because we're showing a proton pack at the end of it. So I'm just like, all right, well, fuck it. If we're going to show the proton pack at the end of it, we might as well just sit there and, I looked up, like, what other, franchises that deal with, like, paranormal kind of crap are, just like, hey, where's the fan films at? And the first one actually came from Oren Pele, who made the original Paranormal Activity. And then the other group of filmmakers that were kind of just like, we'd love to see some fan films about this, because a fan film is basically how Blair Witch 2 got made. Like, they heard the idea of this fan film, and it ended up becoming Blair Witch 2, The Book of Shadows. And so I'm just like, oh, okay, so these two franchises that are deeply seated in like some serious paranormal shit are open to the idea of fan films. So I'm like, all right, well, there we go. There's my starting point. I can use Ellie Kedward, the Blair Witch, and I can use Toby the Demon from Paranormal Activity. And that's kind of where the idea started. And I'm just like, okay, but now I want to make this something homegrown too. Like, I want to put a homegrown story into this and integrate these two characters into this homegrown story. So I'm like, okay, where can I go with that? And then that's where Gore Orphanage came into with it. So I'm just like, oh, okay. So now we have Gore Orphanage, one of the biggest urban legends in this area, Toby the Demon, and Ellie Kedward, the Blair Witch. How do these motherfuckers meet? So then it's just building upon, certain ideas. And I took a very Bob Zemeckis approach to my writing on this, because when they were working on Back to the Future, and they've told this story multiple times before in multiple commentaries and multiple Q&As that have been released in Back to the Future releases. So it's not like I'm sharing any kind of like prophetic wisdom that I know, like I know a secret about Bob Gale and Bob Zemeckis. But when they were writing Back to the Future, it was kind of a very similar thing. Like, okay, we know that we need Marty to discover rock and roll. Marty discovers rock and roll. Okay, so if he discovers rock and roll, then that means he must know how to play guitar. Marty plays guitar. We want to do the skateboard chase, when he's back in the 50s. Marty rides a skateboard. And they were just like putting these index cards up with all these little tidbits that they knew that they were going to be using, and then they started building the story off of those cards. So in a way, I was kind of writing this project, the original idea of this project. I'm kind of giving you guys the entire history of the project so that you can kind of see how I went from where I was to where I am right now and where I'm going to be in the future with it, right? So that's kind of how the idea started. It was just, okay, like, I want to incorporate Toby the Demon. I want to incorporate the Blair Witch. I want to incorporate Gore Orphanage. So how do these three entities meet, especially since they're from three different parts of the country? You've got Ellie Kedward, the Blair Witch, down in Maryland. You've got Toby the Demon in California. And obviously you've got Gore Orphanage in the middle of Peninsula, Ohio. So how do these three things intersect, and how do they meet? And that was kind of the next element that I took with it. So I had a complete story. All the way up to the part where he's just like, I never thought I'd use one of these things, proton pack on the back credits. And the few people that I had read it to were just like, dude, that's amazing. And it kind of just always sat there as like this fan film project that I was going to get to when I was going to get ready to start shooting Ghostbusters. Fast forward 2 years, and my wife and I were watching we're watching this thing on Netflix about Lorraine Warren, and how, and this was like not too long after she died. So this, just so like if you Google when Lorraine Warren died, this will kind of put into a timeline of when this was all happening. This thing came out on Netflix about Lorraine Warren's nephew and how he's the one that's taking over the museum, and he's kind of taking over the Warren Paranormal Society and all that. And how he was talking about this model that Lorraine and Ed Warren had come up with years ago about paranormal investigation, and how they felt, and part of the reason why they stayed at Amityville for so long, part of the reason why they would stay at these places that they were investigating so long, is because they felt that you cannot definitively and truly prove the presence of a haunting in a day, or in 2 days, or in 3 days, like however long these people would stay on site. And they said to definitively prove the existence of paranormal activity, or to definitively prove a haunted location, it takes at least 30 days. I'm sorry, I'm dying. I gotta take these headphones off. And that model was very interesting to me. And I thought that it was a fairly interesting theory. And so I said, okay, I have enough characters that I can introduce into this story where I could make the 30-day model of investigation make sense for the story. And so that's kind of where I was going with it. And so then I added that element to it. So that made it a little bit longer. That made it an hour long. And that's kind of where I left it, where it's just like, instead of just day 1, this happened. Days 1 and 2. Days 3 and 4. And even skipped ahead a couple of days. Days 12 and 13, because I was still trying to keep it into a short film format. And then... and then I kind of just let it sit. It was done. It was written. It was the way I wanted it to be. And that's kind of where I left it. I'm just like, okay, so whenever I decide to shoot Redemption, we can shoot this at the same time, so that, the passage of time isn't that great. Even though there is a 5-year difference between both films. So that's kind of where the idea got started. So the story is this. And I'm not going to give like a lot of details or anything like that, because obviously this is still a work in progress, a WIP. But not only that, but I don't want anybody stealing my shit, right? But the story is this. It's the story of a paranormal investigator from Northeast Ohio, whose group gets tasked with having to prove or disprove one of the greatest urban legends in this area. And during the course of an investigation, they discover links to ancient evils. And those ancient evils were originally going to be Toby the Demon and the Blair Witch, but they are now, the demon I haven't really introduced yet. I haven't figured out how what I want to call this demon or anything like that. I have the idea, obviously, and it's very similar to like what Toby the Demon would have done in Paranormal Activity, but, obviously a demon that does what Toby does, there's millions of demons out there that'll make those kind of deals, right? Because that's what demons do. They make deals for the devil so the devil can steal your soul. Depending on how theological you want to get or how into paranormal dogma, I guess you can call it, you want to get will determine whether or not what part of that statement that I just said you'll believe or not. And then the other part of it, there actually is a woman who was thought to have been tried. Well, she was tried for witchcraft, and was actually put to death because of it. And people have equated things that they've seen in the area where she lived and where she came from, to witchcraft and the fact that she was part of the original witch trials of this country. So I'm introducing a character that's kind of like that, which will kind of be like my Blair Witch-like character, and we'll take it from there. But during the course of the investigation, people die. People get hurt. And a lot of information about his family's past, which he comes from a family of ghost hunters. He comes from a family of paranormal investigators, some of which are more reliable than others, some of which are more respected in the field and the community than others. And a lot of things that kind of happened in his family's past that either he has tried to forget about or he has tried to ignore, all of a sudden start coming into the forefront. And as this investigation is going on, it's getting deeper and deeper, not only into his own family history, but into just a lot of paranormal dogmatic bullshit. And I kind of wanted to touch on a lot of that stuff. There's a little bit of like Mennonite and Amish witchcraft braha that is going to be brought into this. Some Celtic tradition, all of that. But again, this is a build up into another story that I'm going to tell. So there's still going to be a lot of questions that are left unanswered because they're going to be answered in the future in the next project if the next project gets to happen. And if it doesn't get to happen, then obviously I'll do like what I'm doing now and I'll write the book. And maybe I can get the books published and maybe I can work with Sony Pictures and be like, hey, I wrote this original story for a Ghostbusters story. Do you think, would it be okay if I publish it? It doesn't need to be Ghost Core, it doesn't need to be, anything like that. But obviously, I'd want to tag Sony in just to make them aware of it. Not sitting there saying, hey, I'm going to publish a Ghostbusters book and there's nothing you or Dan Aykroyd can do about it. I wouldn't do that anyway because I respect the motherfucker. But there's a lot of the history of the paranormal and a lot of the stuff that's coming into it. The name of the movie and the name of the book, effectively, is going to be called Confessions of a Cleveland Ghost Hunter. And the book is kind of almost written as if this character is like remembering everything that happened while he's being interrogated by investigators. And we're talking investigators like super high up into the government too. Like, the local sheriff, and then we have, state police, and then we have FBI. So like there's like I'm really, really happy with the way that the story is starting to form. I'm probably gonna have to call this episode here soon because I'm losing my voice. But I'm really, really happy with where this is going. And the fact that I was able to elaborate a lot more on the Warren model of the 30-day thing. Because that was a big piece of the story that I felt like I just kind of like skimmed over just to put it in there. And that was one of the main reasons why I was glad that this opportunity kind of fell in my lap to where I would be able to rewrite and redo this project over again. But the other really good thing about it is that I was able to go in and retool and reshape some of these characters, because like when I first started writing this, like my relationship with some of these people was different than it is now. And I didn't want to like sit there and hand this book to these people that I was basing these characters on, and them being like, ew, I thought we were beyond this, or whatever. Like, and not only that, but some of these characters are going to come back into the next movie, and I want them to allow me to not just use them in one movie, but to use them in two. Get where I'm going? But I'm having a lot of fun doing this, and it's kind of sparked something in me creatively, and I hope you guys kind of see that in some of the shit that I'm doing with the production of the show, and how the things that I'm doing production-wise with the show are, getting better the more creative I start to think, right? But we are definitely going to be working on some more stuff with Four Loko. We're going to be working on some more stuff with Bad Juju. Maybe. We're definitely going to be working on a lot of stuff with some local music in the area. And during the time off that I had, I actually did get to meet with Debo Crazy from Psych Ward. And he expressed interest in coming back on the show and introducing some new Psych Ward stuff that he's been working on with some other former members of the group that obviously, he's gotten, been getting new relationships with after what happened with the unfortunate and unexpected passing of Mr. Sick. So I definitely want to do some stuff with a lot of, like, I want to kind of do a lot of new things with the show, make the show a little bit different, and just have maybe like 30-minute segments, kind of like what we were doing last week with the show, where I'm in studio and kind of like giving like, like I do my part of the show at the end of the show instead of at the beginning of the show, and then get into the guests. I want the guests, if there's going to be a guest on the show, to be the emphasis of the show. That's why they're there. And, just improving and maturing the show as time goes on. But the fact of the matter is, I can barely fucking talk now. I got to get some water and some more pills in this body. Because, believe it or not, today's a work day for me, and I got to get back to work. But just wanted to get that information out there for you guys about what happened last week. Finish telling you guys about the project and what the project is and what it's going to be about once it's completed. And just kind of tell you guys some of the things that are going to be changing about the show moving on into the future. I will get another episode out here very, very soon, where I want to talk to you guys about a weird trend that I'm seeing in the customer service world. So we'll get into that on a future episode of the show. But until then, everybody, take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see each other very, very soon.
Money's Crazy Mind is proud to be the exclusive flagship broadcast of Nameless, Faceless Productions.
That's all, folks.